Hello there, and welcome. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had a long day, or perhaps you simply enjoy drifting to sleep with stories that blend history, mystery, and quiet wonder. Whatever brought you here, you've arrived at the right place. Tonight, we're stepping back through the mists of time to medieval Paris, to the narrow cobblestone streets lit by candlelight, where a humble scribe named Nicolas Flamel may have discovered something extraordinary. Some say he found the secret to eternal life. Others believe he unlocked the mysteries of transformation itself. But beneath the legends lies a man whose life was far stranger and more beautiful than any fairy tale. So let your breathing slow, your body relax, and your thoughts drift like autumn leaves on a gentle breeze. Tonight's journey will be calm, curious, and filled with the soft glow of candlelight and ancient mysteries. And if these stories help you find peace before sleep, consider subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing which city you're listening from in the comments below. It helps others discover these quiet tales, one sleepy soul at a time. Now let's begin. In the heart of medieval Paris, along a narrow street near the Saint-Jacques district, there stood a small shop. Its wooden sign creaked gently in the evening breeze, announcing the trade of its owner, a scribe and manuscript dealer named Nicolas Flamel. To the casual passerby, Flamel appeared unremarkable. He was a man of modest means, middle-aged, with ink-stained fingers, and a patient demeanor. He copied books by hand, sold parchments, and helped illiterate neighbors read their letters. His life seemed ordinary, quiet, woven into the fabric of 14th century Parisian life like a single thread in a vast tapestry. But Nicolas Flamel was not ordinary, not entirely. At night, when the city fell silent and the only sounds were distant dogs and the soft flutter of bats, Flamel would light a single candle in his workshop. By that flickering flame, he would open books written in languages most people had never seen: Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Arabic. Some texts were so old their pages crumbled at the edges, their words barely visible beneath the layers of time. Flamel read them all, slowly, carefully, as if each sentence contained a secret that might change the world. And perhaps one of them did. Nicolas Flamel was born around the year 1330, though the exact date has been lost to history. He grew up in a world vastly different from our own, a world where knowledge was rare and precious, where books were copied by hand and cost as much as a small house. Paris, in the 14th century, was a city of contrasts. Grand cathedrals rose toward heaven, their stained glass windows casting colored light onto muddy streets below. Nobles in silk and fur passed beggars wrapped in rags. Scholars debated philosophy in Latin, while merchants haggled in French. And in every corner, there was a sense that the world held mysteries just beyond reach, secrets waiting to be uncovered by those brave or foolish enough to seek them. The streets smelled of wood smoke and baking bread, of horses, and wet stone after rain. Church bells marked the hours, their bronze voices echoing across red-tiled roofs. At night, the city transformed. Torches flickered in doorways, shadows pooled in alleyways. And in windows like Flamel's, candles burned late into the darkness, small beacons of curiosity in an ocean of sleep. Flamel's shop became a gathering place for seekers of knowledge. Students from the nearby University of Paris would visit, hoping to find rare texts or commission copies of important manuscripts. Travelers would stop by, carrying books from distant lands, offering them for sale or trade. Flamel welcomed them all with quiet courtesy, listening to their stories, examining their wares with careful attention. He had a gift for languages, for deciphering difficult scripts, and word of his skill spread slowly through the city's intellectual circles. It was through one of these chance encounters, so the story goes, that Flamel's life changed forever. The legend speaks of a dream. One night, Flamel dreamed of an angel. The angel appeared bathed in golden light, holding a book with covers made of brass and pages filled with strange symbols and illustrations. The angel spoke gently, telling Flamel that one day he would see this book, and when he did, he would understand its meaning, though no one else could. The angel's voice was like music, like wind through leaves, carrying a message that felt both urgent and infinitely patient. Then the dream faded, leaving Flamel with a feeling of awe and quiet certainty. Years passed. The dream became a distant memory, like a half-forgotten melody. Flamel continued his work, copying texts, selling manuscripts, living his modest life. But somewhere deep in his mind, the image of the brass-covered book remained, glowing softly like an ember that never quite goes out. Then, one ordinary afternoon, a stranger entered Flamel's shop. The man was desperate, hungry, perhaps fleeing from some unnamed trouble. His clothes were worn, his face pale. He carried almost nothing, but tucked under his arm was a book. Not just any book, but one with brass covers, filled with symbols and illustrations that seemed to shimmer in the dim light of the shop. It was the book from the dream. Flamel's breath caught in his throat. His hands trembled as he reached out to touch the metal covers, feeling their weight, their strange warmth. The stranger needed money and was willing to sell the manuscript for a modest sum. Flamel, recognizing it immediately, purchased it without hesitation. He gave the man gold coins, more than the asking price, and watched as the stranger left, disappearing into the crowded streets of Paris. He was never seen again. Some versions of the story suggest he was not a man at all, but a messenger, sent to deliver the book to its destined owner. The manuscript was unlike anything Flamel had ever encountered. It claimed to be written by someone named Abraham the Jew, a mysterious figure whose identity remains unknown to this day. The book contained 21 pages, each one a work of art. There were intricate illustrations painted in colors that seemed to glow, deep blues, vivid greens, gold leaf that caught the light. Dragons swallowed serpents, roses bloomed on bare staffs, trees with silver leaves reached toward painted suns, and everywhere, symbols, geometric patterns, letters and scripts that shifted between Hebrew, Greek, and languages Flamel couldn't identify. At the heart of the book was a promise, instructions for creating the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance said to turn base metals into gold and grant eternal life to those who possessed it. But the text was encrypted, written in layers of symbolism and allegory. It spoke in riddles and metaphors. A green lion devouring a sun, a king drowning in water, a phoenix rising from flames. What did these images mean? Were they literal instructions or spiritual lessons? Flamel couldn't tell. He spent nights studying the pages, making notes, drawing connections. But the meaning remained just out of reach, like trying to remember a dream upon waking. He consulted scholars, rabbis, and anyone with knowledge of ancient texts. Most could offer only fragments of understanding. The symbols were alchemical, they said. The language was Kabbalistic. The images represented stages of transformation. But no one could provide a complete translation, a key to unlock the manuscript's deepest secrets. Flamel became obsessed, but not in a desperate or frantic way. His obsession was quiet, methodical, carried out with the same patience he brought to copying manuscripts letter by letter. He traveled, some say, as far as Spain, seeking out Jewish mystics and alchemists who might help him understand the Book of Abraham. In the city of Santiago de Compostela, he met a converted Jew named Master Canches, a physician and scholar who recognized some of the symbols and began to explain their meanings. But Canches fell ill on the journey back to Paris and died before completing the teachings, leaving Flamel with tantalizing glimpses of understanding, but no complete picture. So Flamel continued alone, returning to his small shop in Paris, to his candlelit nights and patient study. And slowly, over years, the pieces began to fit together. Alchemy, in Flamel's time, was not what most people imagine today. It was not simply about greed or magic tricks. It was a spiritual and philosophical practice, a search for transformation, both of matter and of the self. Alchemists believed that all things in the universe were connected, that lead and gold were not truly different substances, but different expressions of the same underlying essence. By understanding the laws of transformation, one could change not only metals, but also the soul, purifying it, perfecting it, bringing it closer to the divine. The language of alchemy was deliberately obscure, designed to hide its secrets from the unworthy, while revealing them to those who approached with humility and genuine seeking. An alchemical text might describe heating a substance in a furnace, but it was also describing the burning away of ego, the purification of desire. The metals had symbolic meanings. Lead represented the heavy, unrefined self. Gold represented enlightenment, perfection, spiritual wholeness. The Philosopher's Stone was not just a physical object, but a state of being, a transformed consciousness. The alchemical process was often described in stages, each with its own color and symbolism. First came the nigredo, the blackening, a stage of dissolution and death. Old forms had to break down before new ones could emerge. This was followed by the albedo, the whitening, a purification, a washing away of impurities. Then came the citrinitas, the yellowing, associated with the dawning of spiritual wisdom. And finally, the rubedo, the reddening, the moment of completion when the Philosopher's Stone was achieved and transformation was complete. These stages were not just chemical procedures, but psychological and spiritual journeys. To create the stone was to transform oneself, to die to the old self and be reborn. It required patience, dedication, and a willingness to face darkness. It could not be rushed or forced. Like a seed growing into a tree, the process unfolded in its own time, according to natural laws that could be understood but not commanded. Flamel studied these principles deeply. He experimented carefully, mixing substances, heating them, watching for changes. But always, he approached the work with reverence, treating it as a sacred practice, not a get-rich-quick scheme. He worked alone for the most part, or with his wife, Perenelle, who shared his curiosity and supported his long, quiet nights of study. Perenelle was more than just a supportive spouse. In many alchemical traditions, the great work required the union of masculine and feminine principles, the balance of opposing forces. Some sources suggest that Perenelle was an alchemist in her own right, knowledgeable and skilled, working alongside her husband as an equal partner. Together, they explored the mysteries of transformation, their marriage itself becoming a kind of alchemical union, each one strengthening and complementing the other. And then, if the legends are true, something extraordinary happened. After years of study and experimentation, Nicolas Flamel succeeded in creating the Philosopher's Stone. The accounts are vague, written in the same symbolic language as the texts he studied. But according to Flamel's own writings, or at least writings attributed to him, he performed the first successful transmutation on January 17th, 1382. He transformed a portion of mercury into pure silver. Then, later that same year, he repeated the process and created gold. The Philosopher's Stone, according to these accounts, was a red powder, heavy and lustrous, with the power to transmute metals and extend life. A tiny amount, added to molten lead or mercury, would transform it completely, turning base metal into gold or silver. And when consumed, diluted in liquid, it acted as the elixir of life, healing illness, restoring youth, and granting the one who drank it an indefinite lifespan. Did this really happen? There is no way to know for certain. But what is undeniable is that Nicolas and Perenelle Flamel suddenly became very wealthy. They had always lived modestly, but now they had resources beyond anything a simple scribe could earn through honest work. And rather than hoarding this wealth, they gave it away. Over the following years, the Flamels became known throughout Paris for their extraordinary generosity. They funded the construction and repair of churches, including the church of Saint-Jacques de la Boucherie, where intricate carvings depicting alchemical symbols can still be seen today. They built shelters for the poor and homeless. They established hospitals and provided dowries for young women who could not afford to marry. They commissioned sculptures, donated to monasteries, and supported artists and scholars. Flamel's most lasting architectural legacy is the house at 51 Rue de Montmorency, built in 1407. It still stands today, the oldest stone house in Paris. Flamel designed it as a free hostel for the poor, a place where anyone in need could find shelter and a meal without judgment or obligation. The facade is decorated with carvings that some interpret as alchemical messages, hands reaching upward, strange geometric patterns, symbols of transformation. Even the inscription above the door, written in Middle French, speaks of charity and the welcoming of those in need. Where did all this money come from? Flamel never explained. When questioned, he offered vague answers about successful business dealings, fortuitous investments, but whispers spread through the city. Some said he had discovered a way to create gold, that his workshop contained furnaces and crucibles where base metals transformed into treasure. Others claimed he had found the elixir of life, that he and Perenelle would live forever, quietly distributing their wealth across the centuries. The rumors grew, embellished and expanded with each telling, and Nicolas Flamel, always modest and soft-spoken, offered no denials, no confirmations. He simply continued his work, living quietly, giving generously, filling the Paris night with small acts of kindness that glowed like candles in the darkness. But here's where the story grows truly strange. Nicolas Flamel died in 1418 at the age of 88. His wife, Perenelle, had passed away a few years earlier. They were buried in Paris in the cemetery of the Church of the Innocents, a place that no longer exists, but was once one of the city's main burial grounds. Their tombstones were carved with symbols that some interpreted as alchemical codes. The inscriptions were simple, humble, offering no grand declarations of immortality or secret knowledge. It seemed, for all intents and purposes, that the story had ended. Nicolas Flamel, scribe and philanthropist, had lived a long life and passed peacefully into history. But not everyone believed he was truly gone. In the centuries that followed, strange reports began to surface. Travelers claimed to have seen a man resembling Flamel in distant cities, always appearing middle-aged, always calm and watchful. In the 17th century, a Parisian bookseller swore he had sold a manuscript to a man who introduced himself as Nicolas Flamel, even though Flamel had supposedly been dead for over 200 years. The man spoke perfect medieval French, knew details about 14th century Paris that few scholars could recall, and paid with coins that had not been minted in generations. Other sightings followed, in India, in Turkey, in the markets of Cairo. Similar figures appeared, always briefly, always leaving behind a sense of mystery. Some claimed to have spoken with him, to have received advice or assistance from a stranger who seemed to know too much, who carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who had lived many lifetimes. Then, in 1761, something even stranger happened. 2 grave robbers, seeking valuables from old tombs, broke into the cemetery where Flamel and Perenelle were supposedly buried. They pried open the stone coffins, expecting to find bones, perhaps jewelry, or artifacts left with the bodies. But the coffins were empty, completely empty. No remains, no clothing, no trace that anyone had ever been inside. Had the bodies been moved, stolen by earlier thieves? Or had Nicolas and Perenelle Flamel never truly died at all? The question lingered, unanswered, like smoke drifting through the streets of Paris. Today, you can still visit the house where Nicolas Flamel lived. It stands at 51 Rue de Montmorency, the oldest stone house in Paris. Flamel had it constructed as a shelter for the poor, a place where those with nothing could find a warm meal and a bed for the night. The carvings on its facade include images that some believe are alchemical symbols, hidden messages left for those who know how to read them. The ground floor is now a restaurant, bustling with life, filled with the clatter of plates and the murmur of conversation. But late at night, when the last guests have left and the street grows quiet, some say you can still feel a presence there, a gentle watchfulness, as if the house remembers its creator. You can also visit the Tour Saint-Jacques, the only remaining piece of the Church of Saint-Jacques de la Boucherie that Flamel helped restore. The tower stands alone in a small park, its Gothic spires reaching toward the sky. At its base is a statue of Flamel himself, depicted as a scholar with a book, surrounded by alchemical symbols. Tourists pass by, taking photos, unaware of the layers of mystery embedded in the stones around them. Flamel's story is not just about gold or immortality. It's about the search for meaning, the desire to transform not just the world around us, but ourselves. In alchemical texts, the process of creating the Philosopher's Stone was described as a journey. It began with darkness, with the breaking down of old forms, the dissolution of what no longer served. Then came purification, the burning away of impurities, the refining of the essence, and finally, there was transformation, the moment when something new and beautiful emerged from the ashes of the old. This process was called the Great Work, and it was understood not only as a physical procedure, but as a metaphor for spiritual growth. To become whole, to become wise, one had to descend into darkness, face one's shadows, and emerge changed. Nicolas Flamel's life, whether or not he truly created the Philosopher's Stone, reflects this journey. He began as an ordinary man, a scribe with simple means. But through patience, curiosity, and a quiet dedication to learning, he became something more. Not a wizard or a superhuman figure, but a person who touched the lives of many, who gave generously, and who left behind a legacy that continues to inspire wonder centuries later. His generosity was not random or showy. It was thoughtful, directed toward those who needed it most. He built homes for the homeless, hospitals for the sick, and shelters that asked nothing in return. This was alchemy in action, the transformation of wealth into care, of knowledge into wisdom, of self into service. The writings attributed to Flamel, whether authentic or later fabrications, speak of transformation in gentle, almost poetic terms. They describe the alchemical process not as violent or forceful, but as a nurturing, gradual unfolding. Like a seed becoming a flower, the base metal was to be coaxed, not commanded. Heat, patience, time. These were the tools of the alchemist, and they were also the tools of a life well lived. Some scholars believe the entire legend of Nicolas Flamel is a myth, a story invented long after his death to sell books and attract curious tourists. They point out that many of the texts attributed to him were written centuries later, that the reports of his immortality are hearsay and folklore. And they may be right. There is no definitive proof that Flamel ever created the Philosopher's Stone or lived beyond his recorded death. But others argue that the lack of evidence is precisely the point. If Flamel truly discovered the secret to immortality, would he have announced it? Would he have left behind clear, undeniable records? Or would he have quietly slipped away, living out his infinite days in anonymity, helping others in small, invisible ways, just as he did in life? Perhaps he changed his name, moved from city to city, always careful never to draw too much attention. Perhaps he is still out there, somewhere, in a quiet corner of the world, reading by candlelight, just as he did 600 years ago. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Perhaps Nicolas Flamel was an ordinary man who became extraordinary through his actions. Perhaps he never created gold, but he created something equally valuable, a legacy of kindness, curiosity, and wonder. In a world often harsh and unforgiving, he chose to be gentle. In a time when knowledge was hoarded, he chose to seek and share. And in an age obsessed with wealth and power, he chose to give. The medieval world was full of alchemists, but most are forgotten. Their names exist only in dusty archives, their works lost or dismissed as nonsense. But Nicolas Flamel endures. His story is told and retold, adapted into novels and films, whispered about in forums and books. Why? Perhaps because his story touches something deep within us, a longing for transformation, for meaning, for the possibility that an ordinary life can become something magical through dedication and love. The story of Nicolas Flamel reminds us that transformation is possible, not through grand gestures or miraculous shortcuts, but through quiet persistence, through the small choices we make each day, to learn, to grow, to give. These are the true secrets, the real Philosopher's Stone, available to anyone willing to seek them. And so, as we close this chapter and the candle burns low, remember that the spirit of Nicolas Flamel lives on, not in dusty manuscripts or empty tombs, but in every act of kindness, every moment of curiosity, every person who seeks to make the world a little brighter. The alchemy of the soul is not a lost art. It is happening now, quietly, gently, in the hearts of those who choose transformation over stagnation, compassion over indifference. In medieval Paris, a scribe once opened a mysterious book and spent his life trying to understand it. He may never have found all the answers, but he found something better, a way to live that mattered, that left light where there had been darkness. He chose to see wealth not as something to hoard, but as something to share. Knowledge not as power over others, but as a gift to be freely given. And whether he lived 88 years or 800, his life became its own kind of philosopher's stone, transforming everything it touched. And perhaps that is the greatest magic of all. If you're still awake, you're welcome to continue exploring more mysteries. But if sleep is calling, let yourself drift now into the soft embrace of rest, carrying with you the quiet glow of a Parisian candle and the gentle wisdom of a man who lived centuries ago, but whose light has never truly gone out. Sleep well and dream of mysteries waiting to be discovered. And remember to subscribe, like this video, and share your city in the comments below so we can keep these quiet journeys going together. Good night.